Turning Point, a service offered by the University of Kansas Health System, serves people living with serious or chronic illness by helping them, their family, and friends learn skills to better manage the illness process, reduce symptoms, and increase coping ability. Using innovative educational services and tools, Turning Point inspires people to take charge of their illness and live their life to its fullest.
Welcome to Bench to Bedside, a weekly series of live conversations about recent advances in cancer, from the research bench to treatment at the patient's bedside.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Roy Jensen, Director of the University of Kansas Cancer Center. With me today, Laurel Lewis, along with Susan Rieger, facilitator for the Supporting the Supporters group at Turning Point. Laurel, you inspire us with your story. Tell us how Turning Point is helping you.
Well, cancer is an interesting journey or university. When you sign up for Cancer 101, you don't know where anything is or how things work. And I was thinking about that. You know who has cancer, you know what they're going to do, you know where it's going to take place, you know what to expect, but you don't know how am I going to live with it. And I think that that's the wonderful thing about Turning Point, because they help you with the how. How am I emotionally going to get through this? How am I personally going to get through this? How am I going to help my husband get through? How are we going to pay for it? How should we be eating? How am I going to get my body through this? So that's been my experience. I took a few classes with Susan and Lawrence about keeping an upbeat attitude, meditation, and I recently have started attending her Supporting the Supporter group at the Turning Point Center, and so it's a wonderful resource, and I'm telling all my people that I know, all my friends who are facing similar situations, to get involved, and a lot of people haven't heard of it. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you're doing this.
Great. So Laurel, what tips have you learned to help you care for your husband and yourself?
Well, it's been the elusive thought of taking care of yourself. The caregiver should take care of him or herself. And it's hard to know what that really looks like. But I've been understanding that I need to take time for myself. When I taught elementary school, one of our 4 classroom rules was ask for help when needed. So I have to remember to ask for help when needed, and it's wonderful to have a place to go where I can tell somebody else how I'm feeling rather than tell my husband, because he's got his own bunch of feelings. And it's very difficult for a caregiver to be plucky and jolly all the time and never get tired, weary, discouraged, afraid. And when you go to Turning Point groups, you can be that person, and people understand. And sometimes the person who is going through the cancer is just trying to keep on. And I've found that me being a relentless cheerleader isn't always what he needs. Mm-hmm. And so it's just been really a good tempering, calming thing to have that sort of influence, that I can tell other people how I feel. Don't tell him, but be respectful and have a safe place to share how I feel about things. So that's all part of taking care of myself. Meditating, getting some exercise, not feeling guilty, and not feeling guilty about feeling sad.
So Susan, could you please tell us about Turning Point and all the programs that they offer there?
Yes, Turning Point is an outreach program of the University of Kansas Health System, and it is quite unique across the country at being able to offer programs about resilience, and it's body, mind, and spirit. And every 2 months, Turning Point puts out a calendar like this that you've probably seen around a lot of doctors' offices here. This program is also online for people to access. And we have about 791 programs we offered in 2018. Over 10,000 people attended. And the groups are 12 to 15 on average, so kind of small enough where people get attention and get to tell their story and interact.
So I think the idea of supporting the caregivers is one that doesn't get near as much attention. Why is it so important for us to have specific programs for our caregivers?
Well, first I want to say our programs are open to both people who are dealing with a serious or chronic illness and caregivers. So a few of the groups that Laurel came to had both caregivers and people who were dealing with an illness themselves. We do have one group that is only open to caregivers, and that is supporting the supporters. And like Laurel said, it's wonderful to have a safe place to talk about feelings. Many caregivers feel guilty when they feel resentment or angry about how their lives have changed and maybe foregoing the vacation they were thinking about this year or whatever changes happen. So that supporting the supporters group is a wonderful place for caregivers, but also many of the other groups, and they range from jewelry making to learning how to meditate to practicing Tai Chi or yoga in chairs. So kind of addressing all the ways that people deal with stress, both the physical and emotional aspects.
Mm-hmm. So you bring up the topic of stress. How does prolonged stress impact the caregiver's health?
Profoundly, both in a physical way and in an emotional way. We see several illnesses that greatly increase among caregivers as compared to the rest of the population, and that includes high blood pressure, diabetes, cardiac issues because of the prolonged stress and not being able to recover because of the demands of caregiving. Also, depression is quite prevalent among caregivers. Probably right around 50% of caregivers who have been doing it for a period of time or are under very high caregiving needs, experience depression. And that's one of the things, it's good to know that that's normal because of how we can't do the things that sustain us often when we're in that crisis mode of caregiving.
So if you're just joining us, we're here with Susan Rieger from Turning Point and Laurel Lewis, a caregiver and Turning Point program participant. Remember to share this link with people who may benefit from our discussion. Use the hashtag #BenchToBedside. So Susan, around 50% of caregivers or so are clinically depressed, as you mentioned. And that's due to a variety of factors, including the prolonged stress, the physical demands of caring for loved ones. What can caregivers do to really help themselves in terms of dealing with these issues?
Thank you for asking that question, because that's the crux of what I wanted to share today. And probably one of the most important things is expanding your support network. Caregiving can be a very lonely and isolating experience. And so coming to Turning Point or contacting an old friend or reaching out to someone that will listen to you is a really important thing to do. Also, exercise. And so frequently caregivers say, I can't leave the house, or I feel like there are so many other priorities ahead of that. However, even 10 minutes of taking a walk or doing an exercise video, and Turning Point does have a resilience toolbox that has some Tai Chi on it and other things that can be done at home. So exercise of whatever kind will fit into your lifestyle. Also, I believe that it's important to ask for help, and Laurel mentioned that, and being able to be ready with that list when someone says, what can I do to help you? And we usually respond in our independent manner of saying, oh, I think I've got it, or we're good for now. Sure. But being able to say, you know what, I'm never going to get to raking the leaves this year. Is there any way you can do that? Or trying to match interests and skills of the person asking to our needs is important. Another thing I believe that's really important is learning some self-calming techniques, deep breathing, meditation, just allow the body to find that rest and come into the parasympathetic nervous system a little more, and that gives us a break, and that's very important. I would also say that caregivers often postpone their own medical appointments. And sometimes I find people who haven't seen their primary care physician for 5 years, when they've been doing caregiving. And that is a really important need. And we often hear stories of caregivers who end up in the hospital and may even pass away before their spouse or loved one. So really important to address that. So all of those things combined of support, learning self-calming techniques, taking care of your own medical and emotional needs. And I would add to that list of not only visiting your primary care physician, but if you are feeling quite depleted or depressed, seeing a counselor, a pastor, a rabbi, or finding a support group so that you have a place to get that support.
Mm-hmm. So Laurel was able to attend these sessions at either at your facility or in Lawrence. What about programming for people that are not able to travel?
Yes, well, we started finding many caregivers being unable to keep appointments. Something would come up, or even in the supporting the supporters group, we say, who needs to leave on their phone today to be available? So for those people who are not able to get away from home for whatever reason, we have a resilience toolbox on the Turning Point website, and it is phenomenal. It has some categories that definitely address some of the problems that caregivers have. For instance, insomnia. Sometimes that happens because of worry, or our body just can't relax from all the stress of the day. Sometimes it happens because we're dealing with getting up to help our loved one. But looking at the things that you can do to help with insomnia, self-calming techniques are on that website, so people can just follow along, and it's wonderful.
So Laurel, I'm curious, how did you hear about Turning Point?
The very day my husband was diagnosed with a very severe prostate cancer, that very day, he asked if there were any support groups that we could go to. And we were told that the Prostate Network meets at Turning Point in the building. And so we drove there in somewhat stunned silence. And that very evening, he went into the men's part room, and I was in with the women. And I had heard about it at the KU Cancer Center, and we went directly there. And so that was our first stop at Turning Point. And I did see the booklet. I was amazed. I loved the place. It seemed to have such a lovely atmosphere and a lovely, warm, encouraging thing going on that's how we got started that very day. So, and he's still very active in the Prostate Network, and we still attend those meetings at Turning Point. And then the second or the third Wednesday of the month, they meet at Gilda's Club.
Right.
But that's that's how we got started.
Okay. So Susan, what are the key takeaways that you'd like our viewers to know about Turning Point and specifically the Supporting the Supporters program?
Well, I would like to first of all say to caregivers, self-care is the message I want to leave with you today. If there's just one thing you can, one habit you can change for yourselves. And I think Turning Point offers this very safe and supportive environment for people to come to, or the Resilience Toolbox if you're not able to come in. And I believe most people find it's a really, just like Laurel, a very wonderful, useful situation.
Okay. And Laurel, what is your advice to those who want to help the caregiver but really don't know how to support those folks?
I am truly going to say, I'm so glad you asked that. People will ask, is there anything I can do for you? And when you're going through this, your mind is so scattered and you are so distracted, and you're brought up to be a resolute, resilient American who can take care of things. Generally, one says, in my position, oh, we've got it. So I'm here to tell you, people listening in, whoever you are, if you know someone in this situation, ask that question, but say, you know what? I'm going to bring supper to your home on Sunday night. We'll be there at 6. We're going to drop it off, and we just wanted you to know that we're thinking of you. In other words, I want to turn the table a little bit, and it's not to say it's not easy to ask for help, but if people who are interested would like to be helpful, think of something you can do. As she mentioned, rake the leaves, mow the grass. My neighbor just had his leg amputated. We said, gee, can we mow your grass for you? Think of something you can do. And I'll just wrap it up by saying, and if you're a person of faith in any kind of spirituality or God, ask, can I pray for you? Because that would be a lovely gift to give to people, to say that you're thinking of them, that you're praying for them. But just think of something you can do and ask if it could be helpful and useful, because it will be. The greatest gift given to me that first week of diagnosis was that very thing. A woman called and said, I'm going to bring dinner over there on Sunday night. We're going to drop it off. We're thinking of you. I didn't know I needed somebody to bring dinner in that night. I wouldn't have asked her to bring in dinner that night. She's a very busy woman, and her own husband is in a 3-year cancer battle. But that was huge, so be thinking about it, kids.
Well, that's
We're
a
in
great
this thing
story.
together.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank both of you so much,
Thank you.
Susan and Laurel. And that's it for today. To learn more, please visit kansashealthsystem.com/Turning Point. Thanks for watching.